But with 589,920 dead Americans, at what point does President Biden say, we don't want to wait for the WHO, we don't know what they're doing, this needs to be an American-led effort to get to the bottom of what happened?
Well, first of all, we need access to the underlying data and information in order to have that investigation.
And why not? But he talks all the time about how he's known President Xi for a long time. So why can't he just call
and we need
ask
them
him for that information?
I think you're misunderstanding how this process actually works. An international investigation led by the World Health Organization is something that we've actually been pressing for several months in coordination with a range of partners around the world. We need that data. We need that information from the Chinese government. What we can't do, and what I would caution anyone doing, is leaping ahead of an actual international process. We don't have enough data and information to drum to a conclusion at this point in time.
So is there any amount of casualties from COVID in this country that would make you want to not wait for an international effort and just do it as...
Well, I have to say, I think the family members of the loved ones whose lives have been lost and deserve accurate information, data, not the jumping to a conclusion without having the information necessary to conclude what the origins are. What we do share, everyone in this country, is a desire to know how this started, where it started, and prevent it from ever happening again. That's something we all share. Go ahead.
Okay, before we jump into anything else, the nerve of a Fox News reporter to ask anyone else what number of dead Americans is finally enough to take action. Fox News was little more than a propaganda arm for Trump's White House while the guy was watching the number of dead Americans skyrocket by the day and yet couldn't be bothered at any point to do a thing about it. Americans were dying while Trump was promising that the virus would go away with the heat, that it would disappear like a miracle, that cases were going down to zero, that it would vanish by April. Americans were dying while Trump was suggesting injecting disinfectant and touting the wholly ineffective hydroxychloroquine. Americans were dying while Trump was politicizing masks, even taking his own off while still infected with coronavirus himself. Americans were dying while Trump was pushing for schools and restaurants and businesses to reopen too soon and demanding that stay-at-home orders be lifted before the virus was even close to being contained. Americans were dying while Trump was packing his fans into campaign rallies, leading to the death of his own friend and colleague Herman Cain. And Fox News was right there with him every step of the way. When one person died, that apparently wasn't enough for Fox News to demand action. Just like when 100 people died, it wasn't enough. Or when 1,000 people died, or 10,000, or 100,000, or 200,000, or 300,000, or 400,000. So for a Fox News host to have the nerve to raise his hand in the briefing room and sanctimoniously grandstand about how many deaths is too many for this White House is just a degree of shameless hypocrisy that's low even for Fox News. Now, as for the origins of COVID, yes, of course everyone wants to know where it came from so that we can take the steps to prevent it from ever happening again. But that's not why Fox News is interested in this, nor is it why Fox News has ever been interested in this. This whole search for the origin has always been a way to absolve Trump of any wrongdoing by diverting attention instead to China. Because so long as the Republicans can continue to convince you that the only ones at fault in all of this are China, then they can continue their work of rehabbing Trump's image. That is what this has always been about. The fact is that if Peter Doocy and his Fox colleagues were actually interested in accountability for the deaths that we've endured as a country, they should probably consider looking at the people who were actually in charge in this country. There is a reason that the US had the most cases and the most deaths on the face of the earth. It was the direct result of our leadership at the time. Every country got the same virus that we did, and yet none of them had the number of deaths that the US had. What that shows is that those deaths weren't the fault of any other country, they were the fault of the people in charge of this one. If Fox really wants answers, they should start with the party that they pander to on a daily basis. Now, as for this clip, Jen Psaki is clear that the way to get accurate information about what did cause this virus is to follow the process along with the other partners in the international community and not, like Peter Doocy says, just have Biden call Xi Jinping and go at it alone. It's that very subversion of the legitimate process that got us into this mess. That whole only I can fix it attitude is why we have more than 500,000 dead Americans. If we abandon our partners in service of some rushed he said she said approach, no one's going to trust the process. And let's be honest here, people not trusting the government hasn't exactly paid off dividends thus far, has it? So instead of an illegitimate process that can once again be politicized and derided by opponents, how about, for once, Republicans and their mouthpieces at Fox appreciate and understand the importance of doing it right, of completing a process that people can actually trust so that we don't keep descending down this rabbit hole of illegitimate information. If they actually cared about the people they purport to care about, this would be priority number one. But the fact that it's not pretty much says it all. To see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. And for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I discuss the week's top stories and interview major players in the world of politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.